Welcome everyone. Today I am going to discuss about the topic A1.3 origin of cells, which is the new IB biology syllabus which was implemented in 2023, and the first exams people are going to write in the month of May 2025. So I have started a series of lessons in which I am going to discuss the entire topic and for SL and HL students. So this notes, handwritten notes, help teachers, students to write their own notes, and my lessons are strictly based on the IB syllabus. So welcome back everyone once again, and let's continue with the topic. So today we are going to discuss about origin of cells, and in this particular topic we will talk about uh, how the carbon compounds are formed, right? And how the self-replicating molecules are formed, and how what was the theory behind life origination, like what happened. So all these things we are going to discuss in this topic. Okay, so let's continue with the first part of the topic, that is origin of carbon compound. This is very important, right? Origin of carbon compounds. Carbon, if you'll see, life is actually uh, all the living form. The major component is the carbon. So it's become a very important to understand why carbon is in the part of organic, uh, uh, means organic means connected to life, right? So before that we will try to understand conditions on early earth and the origin of carbon compound both. So we'll talk about conditions on early earth and the origin of carbon compound, right? So if you'll go into the detail, you will realize that there are some life supporting conditions was favorably made, or just because of the molecules was generated. When I'm saying molecules, the meaning is carbohydrate, protein, fats, lipids. So if you go to the early condition, you will find that life was not supported, right? But are believed to have been instrumental in the origin of biological compound that made the life possible, right? So in this section we'll talk about what are those components, right? So before, let me write one statement, that the condition on early earth were not able to support life, right? Not able to support life. So something has happened, right? But what are the bu- uh, what are the origin of, what are the stories, or what are the theories behind origin of the organic compounds or carbon compound? Let's talk about that. But are believed to have been instrumental in the origin of biological compounds. Fine. And these biological compounds that made life possible. So let's talk about what are those points, how life becomes possible, how the biological molecules are formed. So first of all, there are certain conditions. So first is higher atmospheric temperature. This was the first condition. Higher atmospheric conditions, or not condition, you can say temperature, right? Now if you see, you will find that in the early atmosphere contained high level of carbon dioxide, right? So can I say early earth have higher levels of CO2 and methane, CH4. These two compounds were they were present. Still it is present today also, right? So methane and carbon dioxide, actually what are they? These two are powerful greenhouse gases, right? So these are powerful greenhouse gases, right? So that means these gases have trapped the infrared ray, right? Can we say? So I can say the second point, that these gases, so when I'm saying these gases, I'm talking about CO2 and CH4. What they have done? They trapped infrared radiations, right? So when they are trapping, from where these rays are coming? Coming from the surface of Earth. And these gases, what they are doing? They are not allowing these gases to go out, right? And prevent it from escaping, right? So that means they are not going into space. Fine. This is the vital process going on, and the result of this will be, what the result is, what you think, what will be the result? Temperature will increase, right? What do you think? So you can say that, which in turns increases. The up arrow I am showing, that means it increases. So wherever I use the up arrow, that means I am talking about something has increased, right? So increased surface temperature. So earth temperature has increased, and this is called greenhouse effect, right? Can we call them? Named as greenhouse gases or greenhouse effect. Fine. Now higher level of higher level of CO2 and methane is responsible for increasing the temperature of earth being much higher than what is today, right? Because at that time, so you can say that pre-earth era was more polluted. I mean, that was a natural pollution because of the volcanic eruptions, earthquake, fire, forest fire. These were the natural process, right? So these are the things responsible. Now let's talk about the second factor. So first factor, higher atmospheric temperature. How it is created, we have discussed. Next is UV radiation. Now the atmosphere of the early earth, there was no oxygen during that time, which was not only a problem for sustaining life but also prevented ozone from forming. So that was also a reason. Ozone is formed when ultraviolet radiation from the sun actually interacted with oxygen, because when oxygen interacts, so interaction of oxygen requires more energy. So UV light has provided that energy, and that's why oxygen combines with the free radical oxygen to form O3, ozone, right? So let me write the first point, that the atmosphere of early Earth lacked oxygen, right? Which wasn't only a problem for sustaining the life, but also prevented ozone, O3, from forming. Fine. So that means ozone is formed when UV light is going to fall, right? That's an important point. So you can say that ozone, that means O3, is formed when UV radiation from sun interact with oxygen, right? Oxygen molecules. So in this way, the ozone layer is also formed, right? But yes, it is not so easy process. There are some steps involved. So how it happened? So first of all, ozone absorbs damaging UV radiations. So they are very powerful shield, I can say. Ozone absorb damaging UV radiation, and ultimately it's protecting the earth, right? So can I say that, and protect life on earth? Fine. So if let's say free oxygens are not there, the formation of ozone was not possible, right? So we can say that this lack of free oxygen and therefore ozone in early earth atmosphere led to UV radiation penetrating the earth, right? Because it was not there, so it was penetrating to the surface of earth, and this is how the high radiations, they started going on the surface of the earth, and continuation of this UV radiation causes DNA damage. DNA damage and increases the rate of increases the rate at which mutation occurs. Fine. Of course, DNA damage is due to random mutation, right? Mutation is a change in the base sequence of DNA, and it's an unpredictable change. You can't predict which base has changed in which form, right? So this can be harmful also. Actually harmful to living organism. Right? So these conditions on early Earth may have resulted in the spontaneous formation of carbon. Right? So uh, I can say that these conditions. So whatever conditions, the two conditions we have discussed, UV radiation and high temperature, these conditions on early Earth may have resulted in in the spontaneous formation of carbon. Fine. So all the scientists come to know that there is a spontaneous formation of the carbon compounds, right? And now the question is how they are formed? By chemical process. By chemical processes. Now might be you are thinking what kind of chemical processes that do not occur, currently occurring. So yes, some conditions was there, right? So the conditions I have discussed. So these chemical processes that do not currently occurs. Like what kind of things, what are not currently possible. So we'll write in points. First, adding energy. Right? When we say adding energy, we are talking about heat or UV radiations. So you can say such as UV radiation to the mixture of gases that would have been present in early years or early Earth. And this could have led to the formation of organic molecules. So this is the start of the life. When we say organic molecules, what are the organic molecules? Like protein, sugar, acids, right? Organic acids, right? DNA. These are some examples. Next, what happened? These organic molecules which are formed, right? They start forming the organic or building blocks for life, right? So you can say that these organic molecule would have formed the building blocks of early cell. So on early earth, the early cells are also formed, right? Now after that, there was a scientist called Alexander Oparin and Haldane. They both proposed the idea of primordial soup hypothesis, right? And this hypothesis explained the origin of biological molecules. So scientists, the two scientists, first is Alexander Oparin and second scientist is Haldane. What they have done? Scientists proposed that idea as primordial soup hypothesis, and this hypothesis was used to explain origin of biological molecule, right? So can we say to explain the origin of biological molecule, right? Now it is possible that the high levels of ultraviolet radiation on the early earth could have catalyzed the formation of the polymers, right? When we talk about polymers, we have very uh, some idea about monomers. Might be you are knowing monomers, and these monomer molecules, they get polymerized, right? And they form a polymer unit, right? Polymer is the larger unit, right? And monomer is the smaller unit. Like if you want to have an example, I can say glucose molecule. It is one glucose. If they get polymerized, you can get glycogen, right? You can get cellulose, right? You can get starch also, right? If there are amino acid, if many amino acids are being polymerized, you can get protein, right? So yes, it is possible that high levels of ultraviolet radiation has actually cat they have catalyzed the formation, right? So I can say here for all these support that yes, it is possible that UV light, or better we can say UV radiations, right, on early earth could then have catalyzed the formation of larger polymers, right? So these polymers are produced. It may be anything, right? So when we are talking about the polymers, now the question is, in the beginning, what all molecules were there on Earth, right? So when you see the molecules in the Earth, let me write here, molecules in atmosphere. What is there? You have, let's say, water, right? Then you have hydrogen, H2 gas, right? Then there is a CO2, right? Then you have CH4, methane, right? Then you have ammonia, NH3, right? So NH3 is, let me put hydrogen, right? So green is oxygen, right? Red is hydrogen, black is nitrogen, and blue is carbon, right? So these are the biological molecules. So these molecules, what happened to these? They got UV radiations, right? Or you can say energy was given as a heat or UV radiations. So some energy has gone. Energy sign, right? Okay. So what we have got, all these molecules have now taken part and they have produced amino acids. Let's say some amino acids are like this, right? Some are like this, some are like this, fine. So all these amino acids, they later on formed a protein structure like this, right? So these are protein. There is also possible that a simple sugar is produced, 6 carbon compound for the first time. This is this is simple sugar. And simple sugar can polymerize to make a complex sugar, right? Like this. This is carbohydrate. There is also a possibility where nucleotides are formed, right? This is nucleotide. You have a pentose sugar, 5 carbon, connected to base, right? And they are connected to phosphate. This is nucleotide, and these nucleotides has been polymerized, and we have got RNA molecule, right? So if I have to draw, I can draw like this. This is one. Let me connect to one more. Right? Let me add one more nucleotide. Right? So this is RNA molecule. Right? In the same way, some fatty acids tails are formed. This is fatty acid tail. And what this fatty acid has done? What kind of molecules we are getting from there? From here, we are getting molecules like this. Phospholipid. Fine. So this shows that how biological molecules were formed, and these UV radiations has actually helped to create such things. But the question was, is it practically possible or not? So there was a scientist whose name is Miller and Uri. They have done an experiment, right? They have done an experiment. This experiment actually talks about how the, uh, these scientists have done the experiment, right? So let me show you the setup, how they have formed, right? Just give me a second. Let me put the pictures for you so that we can understand how the arrangement was done. So the setup is very simple. I can I can draw. They can ask you the question in 3 marks or 4 marks how the setup was formed. So before that, let me show you the setup, how it look like. Let me draw the setup. Setup drawing is very simple. So this was a kind of atmospheric chamber where all these molecules were there. NH3, H2O, right? CH4, water, these are present. And this is long tube connected, right? Connected to this particular tube, right? This particular tube have one more centric outlet, right? Let me draw. So this was through which the cold water was going, and through this hot water comes out, or you can say warm water. Fine. And there was a knob here, right? And this whole setup was getting heat from here, right? So this was connected to heat setup. Let me make it circle. Yeah. Now this red, this is called condenser. I'm going to write here condenser. Let me go back. This is condenser. This is your primitive atmosphere. Fine. And there is a heat source. So this is a heat source. Now, so I can say what is here. So here you have water molecules. Water. So this is ocean water, I can say. So I can say primitive ocean heated. So that heating has been shown. And now I will show you what is happening. So the water is converted into water vapor and they are going up into the tube, right? Like this, they're going up into this primitive atmosphere where it was connected to a battery, right? This is battery. An electrical spark is given inside. And after this, this is the inlet of cold water. See, the cold water is going out. Warm water is coming out, right? And then this, the water which was coming out, it was further connected to this to make it a closed circuit. So all the water which comes out of this primitive atmosphere goes back into this container, right? So this was the setup. So what is happening, let me see. So this is the first step, right? So what is happening here in this process? To represent the primitive atmosphere, methane, ammonia, hydrogen are added to the water vapor. Electrical discharge has been done, right? This is second point you can see. So first, in the first point we have created a condition, right? So can I say here, to represent the primitive atmosphere CH4, NH3 and H2 are added to water vapor. Next, what happened? Number 2. So these gases are present here. Now you need to provide an energy so that they can react. So electrical discharge model was used. So you can say electrical discharge to model lightning and thundering, right? Like in the primitive earth, something light. And these light, what they do, they provide energy. Provide energy. For what? To synthesize new compounds, right? Next. Next, what is happening in the third step, right? So now the question is where to show the third step. We'll show third step here. This is 3. So in the third step, what is happening? The condenser, the hot water which is coming out, these water must be cooled down so that it can go into the ocean container, like ocean water, oceanic water, or here in this particular round bottom flask. So you can say that the condenser cools the atmosphere or atmospheric gases which condense. And then later on, what is happening? The condensed water going to get collected, and sometime if you want to analyze that also possible. So we have a container. So in the container the water is also get collected. Some are going down. So this is the fourth step. So what we can say that the condenser liquid is collected and analyzed. So scientists can see what has happened, what was the situation. So both scientists, Miller and Urey, they have done this experiment to realistically try to understand how these biological molecules are produced. So if we'll go into the, let's discuss about the setup once again. So scientists Miller and Urey, actually they have recreated the condition. So the condition you can see here in the diagram, to have the existed on earth prior to the life. So they try to recreate. So the apparatus which was used, they boil the water to produce steam, right? Recreating the earth, early earth primordial soup evaporating in the high temperature that existed on earth. So you can say you can see the heat, I mean not heat, the water vapor is going up. Mix the steam with the gases including methane, hydrogen, ammonia, right? That recreated the atmosphere. Then electrical discharge of the gases. Electrical discharge to the gases, they stimulate the lightning and it makes the compound. And then later on we have a condenser to cool down all the water and get collected. Some water is collected for analysis. So after a week, Miller and Urey, they analyzed the container and they found traces of organic compound. Wow. I mean, it was a great experiment, and what they have found is amino acid. So yes, something might be happened realistically like this, where the biological molecules are produced. Now let's try to evaluate their experiment findings. Okay, so if a question is on how they have done the experiment, what are the findings, you can write like that. Let's do the evaluation. So evaluating the Miller Urey experiment. Fine. So let's talk about number 1, methane availability. Fine. So at a time Miller and Urey performed their experiment, at that time it was believed that they simulated the early atmosphere accurately by including high level of methane. This was the first. Second is, and the high level of methane, it is also believed that methane may have been in a low supply in the atmosphere of Earth. That was also a kind of idea. Energy source. Right? So Miller and Urey used an electrical discharge as a source of energy in the experiment instead of UV light. That is not practically possible. So this electrical discharge or the source of energy is actually used to synthesize organic molecule. However, CO2, nitrogen, water requires nuclear and more than UV radiation along with the electrical discharges. That's why only few biomolecules was traced means it was analyzed. Third is presence of water. In a watery environment, amino acid tend to remain as monomer, right? Rather than joining to form a protein. So given that water is needed to form primordial soup, this contradicts the idea that complex molecule could have formed in this environment. So this is supported. What about the nucleotides? Miller and Urey were unable to generate nucleotides. This was they have not found. So nucleotide have since been chemically synthesized using a different ideas or approach, but so far it is not practically